This video will explain every domain expansion in Jujutsu Kaisen. We'll go over what a domain expansion is, 14 domains, and 3 honorary mentions. In chapter 134, Kenjaku calls a domain a technique's most supreme art aside from maximum techniques. They can trap their opponents and hit them with moves they can't dodge, so they're almost an instant win. Each user has their own hand sign, and their domains are made from their own minds. So even two people with the same technique, like Mai and Yorozu, would have completely different domains. As soon as it's cast, a domain spawns right on top of its target. Since it uses coordinates, this gives the defender no way to dodge. One of the biggest advantages is they can trap their opponent. They do have to weaken the outside of the barrier, but this lets the caster trap their targets with nowhere to go. While inside their own domain, the user gets a huge boost to their strength. According to Gojo, this gives the user a boost in stats like a video game, and let Daten take on Maki and Naobito at once. Most domains in the series use what's called a guaranteed hit technique. This lets them hit their opponent even if they can't be touched like Satoru Gojo. But not every domain works this way, and some don't use guaranteed hits at all. The benefit of these domains is they establish a set of rules that help the caster. That being said, domain expansions are incredibly strong and many people don't even have one. Even Kento Nanami, who's as strong as a special grade curse, never mastered domain expansion before he died. But those who do get domains take plenty of time to master them. Even Gojo, one of the strongest in the series, didn't show his until 11 years after he started training. Since they're so strong, domains drain a ton of cursed energy from their user. This made Mahito so tired he barely had any cursed energy left, where later, his recovery could even take days. But even then, domains still burn out the user, so it's hard to use their technique once it ends. This is best shown in Gojo's fight against Sukuna, where after his domain, Gojo couldn't use his technique to escape Sukuna's grasp. Because they're so dangerous, people made counters to domains in the past to stop the guaranteed hit from even touching them. These moves like Falling Blossom of Motion, Simple Domain, and Hollow Wicker Basket stop the guaranteed hit from landing in the first place. But that's not the only way to fight back, because some characters can use domain clashes. This lets them use their own domain to clash with their opponent, where the stronger character, more refined domain, or better element will win. To make things even better, some characters have open domains. This lets them attack their opponent's barrier from the outside without ever having to leave, to break the barrier and win the clash, which only two people know how to do. But this isn't the only advanced domain there is, since Mahito and Gojo can cast theirs in 0.2 seconds. This lets them hit many characters so fast they can't even respond to counter. This makes one of the biggest threats to most domains Heavenly Restriction, since characters like Maki and Toji won't be attacked by guaranteed hit techniques or trapped by barriers, since with no cursed energy, the domain won't even know they're there. Even then, there's still one domain that can hit people without cursed energy. Sukuna's domain attacks things with and without cursed energy, so Maki and Toji aren't immune. Now that you know what a domain expansion is, it's time for the first domain from Special Grade Curse, Finger Bearers. While the curse is stronger than some, its domain is incomplete, so it doesn't do any damage for now. But the next domain expansion is deadly and belongs to Megami Fushiguro, Chimera Shadow Garden. Even though it's incomplete, it's strong enough to fight Reggie Star and Special Grade Curses. Every time he uses his domain, Megami brings out a specific hand sign. This sign represents Maharaga, the ultimate Shikigami for the ultimate 10 Shadows technique. But it still puts him in tough situations since he hasn't finished his barrier. So if he uses his domain out in the open, his opponents can walk away and he'll waste a ton of cursed energy. Due to this, Megami doesn't have a guaranteed hit, because without a barrier, there's nothing to apply it to. This does make Megami's domain weaker, but we'll have to see how he fixes that over time. But what does happen is he gets a huge boost to his technique's potential. This makes his technique 120% better and makes every shadow stronger than normal. When using his domain, Megami can summon clones of his own body. This lets him attack opponents from every angle with extra bodies as strong as himself. But to push it even further, he can clone all his Shikigami as well. This lets him electrocute opponents, trap and overwhelm them with pressure from all sides. Since he uses his domain in closed spaces, Megami can spawn shadows from above. This is a huge boost to Megami, since he can drop 6-ton elephants on his opponents as long as they're in range. But even then, his technique gets even more dangerous, since he can drown his enemies in a pool of shadows. His opponent can't breathe or swim their way back to fresh air, so Megami can drown them until they die if he wants to. Now that we've covered Megami's domain, it's time to move on to deadly sentencing from Hiromi Higuruma, who got as strong as a special grade curse in only 12 days. Most of these characters have lethal domains, but Higuruma is not one of them. His domain forces rules of no violence, so no one can attack him while inside. But even though they don't fight with fists, Higuruma's domain is very strong, since his opponent has to outwit him in a court case where Higuruma has all the evidence. His summon, Judge Man, knows everything about his opponent, but this doesn't make Higuruma any stronger. The evidence he gets isn't conclusive, and Judge Man doesn't talk to him, so Higuruma and his opponent are on their own. If his opponent does lose, they can be hit with curse technique confiscation. This takes away his opponent's technique, and they have to fight Higuruma with none of their own abilities. But there are special cases like Yuji, who never had a technique to begin with. So with Judge Man's confiscation, they lose all their curse energy and have to fight Higuruma, who has all of his. But if his opponent did something as heinous as mass murder, they'll get the death penalty and confiscation, a huge boost and loss on each side. This takes away the same things it did before, but Higuruma gets the Executioner's Blade that kills anything it touches without question. Now that you know about Higuruma, it's time to talk about Daten and the horizon of the captivating Skanda that was so strong it took on Megami, Maki, Naobito, and Nanami at the same time. Now since Naobito didn't let Daten do a hand sign, it wasn't shown in the manga, but we do see the pouch on his chest instead. This pouch is called a Hyotai, a bag with many treasures that may represent the Shikigami that Daten summons inside. Keeping this in mind, Daten's summons are Death Swarm Shikigami. The Shikigami are guaranteed to hit, so they don't exist until they strike their opponent. But there is one thing Daten does that others don't, and that's dividing his strength against two people at the same time. His pressure was divided with a 70-30 split against Naobito and Nanami, but it's still effective. To counter this, Naobito brings out Falling Blossom Emotion. This move attacks anything that hits him and counters the Shikigami until Daten strikes Naobito himself. That's something Daten can deal with, but there's even bigger counters to his domain, and that's open barriers. Open barriers like Sukuna can attack his from the outside and break Daten's apart before he can do anything to respond. Now someone that never happened to is special grade curse Hanami, who's strong enough to fight Yuji and Todo at the same time. But because Gojo crashed the fight with Yuji, Hanami's domain never came out in the manga, but it does make its way to Cursed Clash, and we find out about it there. With its domain, Hanami fires a powerful blast of cursed energy. This lets it wipe out its opponent with one move, but Hanami's domain may have a big weakness, since it stood still to charge while it was weakened. So unless this only happened because it was hurt, it makes the domain very hard to use. Now that you learned about Hanami, it's time for the Smallpox Cursed Spirit, a curse so strong it could fight Mei, a grade 1 sorcerer, on its own. Now this may sound odd, but it starts by trapping its target in a coffin, so he can drop a huge stone on them from above. Once that happens, the curse counts down from 3 to 1, and this is the most deadly part of the Smallpox domain, since once the countdown's finished, the target gets smallpox and dies. But these gravestones do very heavy damage, and too many can make a sorcerer weaker. Mei took so much damage that if it kept going, she'd be too weak to fight Kenjaku, so she had to finish as fast as possible. Now this is a guaranteed hit technique, so the threat comes back over and over again. So even though she broke free, she still takes risk and damage a second time, tipping the scales in the curse's favor. But Mei did have one big advantage. The curse targets who has the highest cursed energy, and Mei brought her brother, Ui. This is a major weakness, since he survived with simple domain, and Mei killed the curse since she was free. Even though that domain's impressive, there's one even stronger, and that's Restless Gambler from Hikari Kenji, who's so strong he fought one of the strongest sorcerers of all time. Hikari, like many others, has his own unique hand sign. This hand sign's called Benzaiten and represents the kanji for money. But Hikari's domain has even more to it than that, and even comes with its own theme song. This lets Hikari take down enemies in style, while Pure Love Train plays in the background, making it the most stylish domain there is. By now you're wondering what Hikari's domain does, so it's important to say it's non-lethal. This doesn't make his domain weak, even though his guaranteed hit is information that forces itself into its target's brain. When this happens, it's one of the fastest guaranteed hits in the series, even faster than Mahito in Shibuya. Mahito's domain was 0.2 of a second, and Todo or Yuji couldn't react in time. making Hikari's domain one of the fastest ever shown in the series. But Hikari's domain is different than other people since it rewards him for gambling. How good some of these boosts are is unknown, but he can win a jackpot that gives him infinite cursed energy. This cursed energy gives him a huge boost in a fight. Since he had so much, Kashimo's passive didn't even affect him. Hikari isn't guaranteed to hit a jackpot every time he gambles, so this can probably end badly. While it's unknown what the consequences are, the chance to win big is 1 in 239. Yet Hikari's luck won him a jackpot every time against Charles and Kashimo. With his jackpot, Hikari's cursed energy gets so high, he gets automatic reverse curse technique. This lets him heal his body as long as no one destroys his brain, and even come back from poison while he's still fighting. This does stop after 4 minutes and 11 seconds, but there is a reason this is one of the best domains. With his infinite curse energy, Hikari can use his domain as soon as it ends and land a jackpot again, making him one of the few who can use a domain back to back to back. He's also one of the only people who moved his domain somewhere else entirely, like when he shifted its coordinates to take Kashimo over the sea and force out all of his cursed energy. But even Hikari's domain isn't perfect and does have a closed barrier. So if he fought someone like Sukuna, Hikari's domain would break from the outside. To give him another accolade, he's one of the rarest domain users in the series, since he never had to learn domain expansion to begin with. He and Higuruma got their domains automatically with their techniques and mastered their craft over time. As impressive as that was, the next up is Mahito, the special grade with self-embodiment of perfection. That's so strong, Nanami knew instantly he would die. Mahito is the only character who uses hand signs from his mouth, and it has its own meaning. The hand sign, the Maitreya, is a person training to pass Buddha as the next honored one. But even that isn't the only sign of Mahito's potential, since he got his domain a few days after his first fight. He even got an advanced version only 1 month after he got it, a version only Satoru Gojo could use. Something you'll notice with Mahito's domain is it's surrounded by his own hands. This is based on his own technique, where he uses his palm for idle transfiguration to kill his targets from the inside. However, that's not all there is to it, since this is one of the strongest domains in the series. With idle transfiguration's guaranteed hit, Mahito can attack the soul, which hardly anyone can survive. To bring this point even further, the domain was used on grade 1 sorcerer Kento Nanami. Even though Nanami's on par with special grade curses himself, he knew the domain was game over the second he was inside. But self-embodiment of perfection isn't perfect and still has a closed barrier, which is a big weakness. This makes it so anyone with an open domain, like Kenjaku and Sukuna, can destroy Mahito's barrier from the outside and take all the pressure away from Mahito's domain. Now that we've covered Mahito, it's time for Jogo's Coffin of the Iron Mountain that went head to head with one of the strongest, Satoru Gojo. Jogo does have a hand sign like others, but the meaning behind it is really cool. His hand sign's based on Daikokuten, who is Shiva, the god of destruction. Since Jogo's so destructive, it makes sense his domain can burn anyone alive that walks inside. This means he can kill most in the series from casting his domain alone. But what's different about Jogo is no one knows what his guaranteed hit even is. He did throw a test attack at Gojo, but that doesn't say what he can do for now. Now Jogo is another character with a closed barrier, so if he fought Kenjaku or Sukuna, they would break his barrier from the outside. But even with that in mind, it's also weaker than Gojo's as shown in the series. This was so bad he wouldn't clash with Sukuna a whole month later, even with Sukuna at 75% strength. While Jogo is impressive, the next up is Cursed Nalia, Time Cell Moon Palace, that could take on Daido and Mayo even though Daido cut him in half with one swing. Nalia has a hand sign like many others, but its meaning may surprise you. It's based on Gigaten, the goddess of entertainment. Since Nalia is the king of misogyny, his domain's based on a woman and the design is questionable, it probably entertained Gege that he was killed by a woman 2 times in a row. Now it's time for his guaranteed hit technique that injects his target with projection sorcery. This lets him kill his targets from the inside and attack every cell in their body anytime they don't move like him. Now this is dangerous, but there is a big counter, Toji and Maki Zeni. Neither of them have curse energy, so Nalia's domain can't target them to begin with, which is how Maki killed Nalia in the end. Now that you know about Nalia, it's time for Yorozu, with her domain expansion, Threefold Affliction. This domain is so strong, she thought it could one-shot Sukuna even at 15 fingers. Yorozu is wildly in love with Sukuna, but their signs are polar opposites. Yorozu's hand sign is Shirushi, who nurtures life and saves people, while Sukuna's represents the king of hell. Once her domain's active, she finally proves why it's one of the strongest. She makes a sphere of infinite pressure that would crush anything it touches, even Sukuna, who hardly anyone else could beat. But there is one big weakness to Yorozu's domain, and that's the Shikigami Maharaga. As long as he adapted to her technique, Maharaga can one-shot Yorozu's domain and destroy it from the inside, making it the best counter to Yorozu. Now, even though he used Maharaga, this isn't the only way Sukuna can win. Yorozu's domain is closed while Sukuna's is open, so he can destroy hers from the outside with Malevolent Shrine, even without 10 shadows. That is a painful way to lose, but Sukuna's not the only one that can do this, because it's time for Kenjaku with his domain Womb Profusion. That flattens special grade sorcerer Yuki Tsukumo in one hit. Kenjaku's hand sign is for the body and mind of Buddha to be united and become enlightened. Seeing as he's special grade like Gojo, this means he's one of the enlightened ones. But Kenjaku's domain is incredibly dangerous and still one of the strongest there is. He's one of the only people with an open barrier that even shocked the best barrier user of all time. Open domains can also crush barriers from the outside. This lets him win domain clashes against many others in the series. But Kenjaku has another huge bonus: how much he refined his domain over time. His domain is so strong that even simple domain that should neutralize it won't hold out against him, not even from special grade sorcerers. His guaranteed hit technique has also yet to be named. The technique lets Kenjaku crush his targets with gravity that he got from Kaori Itadori. Now, Kenjaku's domain is impressive, but there's a whole group of people that are a complete mystery. The domains of Yuta, Uro, and Ryu, one of which killed Kenjaku himself, admittedly with help from Takaba. What these domains can do is still a mystery, so it's not clear how strong they are. This is because all three were used at the same time, which overloaded the barriers, causing them to shatter and not be seen in Sendai Colony. Now that we covered Yuta, Uro, and Ryu, it's time for one of the strongest, Satoru Gojo's Unlimited Void. This domain was so strong, Jogo lost instantly, even though he's special grade. But Gojo's strength is also hinted by his hand sign from Gege Akutami. Gojo's hand sign is Indra, the god who's the strongest, which is perfect for Unlimited Void. When his domain starts, his attack lands the moment it comes out. This lets him attack with his guaranteed hit before his opponent has any time to respond. But the real show starts when Gojo's technique floods its target with infinite information. This lets him paralyze his opponent while their mind is overloaded, and he can attack them however he wants and they can't move. Gojo's domain floods its target with 2.5 years of information per second and is incredibly dangerous. This was enough to damage Sukuna's brain in only 10 seconds and rob domain expansion from one of the strongest sorcerers in history. While this is impressive, Gojo's domain isn't invincible, since it can be destroyed from the outside. When facing Sukuna with his open domain was able to shatter Gojo's closed one by attacking from the outside, even though they're equal in the barrier. When this happened, Gojo flipped his conditions to boost his domain strength. This let him make his barrier strong enough to survive Malevolent Shrine for a short amount of time. But when that didn't work, Gojo gave himself a boost that no one has ever seen until then, shrinking his domain to make it stronger and sturdier than ever before. During their fight, Sukuna shows yet another weakness of Unlimited Void, and that is domain amplification. This lets Gojo's target get past his guaranteed hit since it negates the attack, forcing him to win by other means. But this isn't the only way Sukuna found to exploit Gojo. Unlimited Void won't affect anybody that touches him, so Sukuna went back to back with Gojo to not be hit by his technique, which made him immune for a short time. Now, even with that in mind, Gojo has strengths that others don't, like his 0.2 second domain, one of the fastest domains in the series, only matched by Mahito and Hikari, who was even faster than that. But Gojo's strengths only go up from there, and he can refresh his burnt out technique by attacking and healing his own brain. This lets him use domain expansion 5 times in a day before his brain is exhausted from overuse. Now that's definitely crazy, and there's still another reason this is one of the strongest domains in Jujutsu Kaisen. Gojo's domain can't be survived with reverse curse technique, which makes his guaranteed hit even better than Sukuna's when it lands. But Sukuna is incredibly dangerous, so it's time to talk about Malevolent Shrine. The domain's so strong, it took on Satoru Gojo himself. Sukuna's hand sign fits his character for what it means. The hand sign is for Yama, the king of the dead, who used to be human just like Sukuna in the past. But his guaranteed hit technique is even more destructive with Dismantle and Cleave. This lets Sukuna attack anything with and without cursed energy as long as they're in range until the attack ends. One of the biggest benefits of Sukuna's domain is its open barrier. This lets him attack domains from the outside and destroy them even if they're equal to him in strength. But Sukuna's domain is not perfect, since Gojo survived with reverse curse technique. This is something that can't be done with Unlimited Void, and proves why Gojo's domain is stronger in the end. He can also use Binding Vows to increase his range. This lets him go up to 200 meters and shrink the size at will in exchange for his opponent having ways to escape. But even then, Sukuna has another boost he can give himself. Using another Binding Vow, Sukuna can make his guaranteed hit even stronger and break strengthened barriers from the outside. Now the last part isn't confirmed, so take this as you will, but if it happens, it'd be a major boost for Sukuna. Since he can cut the world with Cleave, he may be able to use his World Splitter inside his domain and rip through anything in one move. Now that would be incredibly broken. But there's still the honorary mention, starting with Mayo, the man who trained Maki to unlock her full potential and match Toji Zenin. Mayo's domain is a simple domain that doesn't use guaranteed hits and instead slows down time. This let him train Maki for 1,000 matches while only 1 minute passed in the real world. The next is another simple domain by Kuchisake Onna, a curse from special grade sorcerer Suguru Geto. This domain was used against Toji Fushiguro, a man who can kill the entire Zenin clan all at the same time. The domain traps its target with a pact that can't be broken until its question is answered. This lets it cut apart its target with giant pairs of scissors, if the answer they give isn't to its liking. Of course, the domain has a major weakness, and that's Toji himself. This is due to Toji's inverted Spear of Heaven that turns off curse techniques and negates the simple domain entirely. If you want to learn more about one of the strongest domains there is, there's still a way for you to do so. Click the video on your screen to hear more about Ryomen Sukuna, the strongest sorcerer in history.